afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this recording and presentation for Innovate Eastman. My name is Matt Skobrick. I'm an entrepreneur in residence at Innovate Eastman. And today I'm really excited to share with you what I think is one of the best business tools for early stage companies, which is a lean canvas. The idea of a lean canvas is that it's going to help you to tell the story and start to plan out the concept of your business. And the good news is you could do it in 90 minutes or less. The idea of this is that if you have an idea, you have a concept, but you're not sure how to turn that into a business, this is the tool for you that will help you to put some information and assumptions into writing in some capacity and use that as a first draft that you can refine over and over and over again until at the end of the day, you will have a fully completed business plan. So what we're going to cover today is first understanding what a lean canvas is, the merits of it, how we use it, and then we're going to go through that canvas step by step. So there's 9 parts of a lean canvas. We're going to go over all 9 of those things. In addition, I've taken the time to give an example. So as we go through all of these sections, just to make it a little easier for you to understand, I have given an example of how I would fill out a lean canvas for a specific company. Hopefully it's a company that you know, and I won't tell you until the end. And so follow along and see at what point you are able to guess which company I'm building a canvas for. And then at the end, you might be able to understand why those assumptions and why this all came together in the way it did to create that business model that, not to give anything away too much, but it has launched and is quite successful. And then after, we're going to talk about once you have that first draft of your canvas complete, what you do with it afterwards and how you continue to refine and update that and how that will continue to add value to your startup over time. And I should say, both the example that I picked as well as my own experience with this canvas is more towards software startups, but really any business can use this type of model. And if you're researching this, you might see different types of canvas called a business model canvas. These are essentially the same thing. A lean canvas is meant for earlier stage companies. When you're making a lot of assumptions, you're not necessarily sure about what that business is going to look like. But that can be for anything. It can be for a side hustle. It can be for a restaurant or service industry. It can be for software. Whatever your business is, this is a template that should serve you well to help get past those early stages of ideation and iteration on your business idea. So a lean canvas, they say it's a 1-hour business plan. I think maybe it takes a little longer, which is why I say 90 minutes. But it's 90 minutes at the end of it. You've really gone through that thought process of thinking through everything. And a lean canvas comes again in 9 sections. And you see on the screen here examples of what a lean canvas will look like. And generally, the boxes are all the same and always in the same space. So you can start to get a feel for the flow of what this document looks like. And you can fill it in any way that you want, in any order that you want, based on where your passion is, where your mind is at. There is, however, my preferred way of filling this in a certain order. And that's the way that we're going to go through this together. And I'll explain why I prefer this method overall. That being said, if you wanted to start in a completely different space and do it in a completely different order, that's certainly not wrong. At the end of the day, this is still very much an iterative process. You are going to be, basically writing down and rewriting for a couple of different drafts, all of these sections over the next few weeks as you start this process. So don't feel like it needs to happen in some sort of sequential order. So here's an example of what this looks like. If you go online and search for Lean Canvas, you can find a template that works for you. You can also just do it in Excel. It doesn't have to be formatted this way, but there are a lot of format options out there. And if you are looking for a specific template and you want to see one, feel free to reach out to me or Innovate Eastman, and I'm sure we'd be happy to get you a copy. So how you use a canvas is that it is the first draft, again, as I said, of a business plan specifically for new businesses. So most businesses will have to have a business plan at some point. And the audience for that business plan is typically going to be maybe an investor, a banker, someone who really wants to see the fully flushed out nuts and bolts. If you're applying for a grant, for example, having a business plan makes sense. But as a founder of a new company, you don't necessarily have the time to write a 60-page document right now. And even if you did, you're growing your business so fast and going through pivots and changes that your 60-page business plan, by the time you finish drafting it, is probably going to be outdated. So rather than go through that whole process, we're going to start with this document and help to use that as a stepping stone to evolve when you need it into that larger business plan. So as your company gets more defined, as you start to cement in what your model will look like, you will then be able to give more detail and draft a larger document that will become that business plan. But for right now, we're talking about a living document, essentially. And traditionally, a lean canvas is something that you might stick as a poster on your wall, and you're filling all this in on Post-it notes, because the idea is week to week, you will tear that Post-it note off as you learn more things about your business model, you've validated some assumptions, and you will improve on that. So sticky notes just is a way to throw the last draft away and put a new one on. This is not meant to be a fixed document. In fact, you will probably go through a dozen or more different drafts of your full business plan and certain sections within that. So keep that in mind as we go through this process. This is not meant for you to have a perfect first draft. You are meant to just come up with some general assumptions and improve and iterate those over time. There is good software you can use. The one that I tend to use is called Miro, M-I-R-O. That's just essentially a digital sticky board and Post-it note brainstorming software. So same idea, same function, but you can do it virtually rather than have to throw away a bunch of sticky notes at the end of the day. Okay, so I talked about different ways of doing this. This is the way that we're going to go through this. It doesn't look intuitive, right? This is not following a linear path. That's because different people will fill this in differently. The reason that I like the path that you see on the screen here is I always want to start by thinking about who I'm selling to and then what I'm selling. We'll get into this in a little bit more detail, but you can see here, we're starting first with our customer segments. And in fact, in a couple of months, I'll be having a whole other presentation just on the topic of customer segmentation. So lots more to discuss here. But through that, we're going to start with our customers, figure out what problems they're having, and then understand what we can do that is unique to helping those people solve that problem, and then build a solution around the value that we can provide. After that, we're going to understand how we're going to identify and sell to our customers, how we're going to make money, what we have to spend in order to make that money, how we're going to measure success, and then finally, at the end, as sort of a summary of everything, talk about what makes us unique and what we can do that others can't. So let's dig into it. First, we're going to start with customer segments. So the idea here is understanding who it is that you're selling to. And within that, understanding who is most likely to be a customer, not only over time, but right away, those first customers, those early adopters. Whatever your solution is, there are going to be people more excited, more willing, more enthusiastic to become your customer right away. And your job as an entrepreneur is to find those people as quickly as possible and understand what they need and speak that language that will get them to open their wallets for you. And then understanding how you're going to segment that market. And so segmentation really means just understanding, who is your customer and who is not your customer. And a lot of early stage companies, they will go, they'll assume that, I have something that everyone in the world wants to buy, or everyone could be my customer. And while that might theoretically be true, something for you to keep in mind is that not everyone is going to be a good customer of yours. It might take a lot of time and resources to be able to sell to them. They might not have the need or the budget to be able to buy from you right now. There might be reluctance to try a new technology or solution they're not comfortable with. So all of these, if you take those unlikely customers away, then you're able to focus with more targeted resources and messaging towards a specific smaller set of people with a defined need that you will be able to reach directly. Once you've done that, you will then be able to understand what their needs and their wants are and how to speak to them. Another important thing to think about is that customers are not necessarily the same thing as users. So, for example, if I'm selling to some educational software to high school students, I might be selling to high schools or school divisions. They might be the ones paying me, but the users of that software are going to be the students and the teachers. And so in that circumstance, we need to think about two different customer segments or two different segments. One of customers, making sure that we're speaking to them, that we're providing value for their money, and one for users, that they're finding that our solution is easy to use and they're getting value from it and it's worth their time and investment. So early adopters, again, thinking about not everyone is going to buy right away. Maybe as the company grows, you'll be able to expand your customer pool, but who's first? And so that early adopter are the people who are willing to take that risk with you on something that might be a little unproven, that might not be 100% where you want it to be once your solution is fully developed. But those early adopters do exist. So how do we find them and reach out to them? So you'll see in blue here, this is my example. Again, I'm not going to give the company name away until the very end, but we're going to go through this together. So I've identified there's some customers out there and they're businesses. I'm going to try and sell a B2B, a business to business model. And I'm thinking of businesses, they're large and small, who are remote. So not everyone's working together in an office. We, for the most part, know how that feels right now to be working in a distributed network. And we know that that can be a problem sometimes. So our early adopters, the people we're going to focus on right now, because we said that over time we're going to sell to businesses large and small. But right now we're focusing mostly on small businesses who are a little bit tech savvy, who are okay with the idea of using technology to find a way to communicate. So step two, of course, we're not going to go into business unless we have a problem to solve. And we want to think about those problems, not through the problems that we're experiencing, but the problems that our customers are experiencing. Very important to always put ourselves in our customers' shoes to understand their frustrations and their emotions and the impact that these problems are having on them. So with a lean canvas, the idea is you're going to want to identify 1 to 3 problems that you think your customers are experiencing, and then understanding how they're solving that problem today. So, right, if again, going back to educational software as the example that I'm giving live, maybe the problem is there's not good access to tutoring. Maybe, maybe the quality of study materials isn't as high. And so maybe that's a problem for the students. Maybe it's a problem for the teachers. Maybe it's a problem for the school that wants to see grades increased. Well, what alternatives are happening to that right now? Maybe it's private tutoring services. Maybe it's study guides and books or study groups, but those are still not solving the problem well enough in a way that that problem has disappeared. And then that is a problem then that you've identified that you can go ahead and solve. So the problem that I've identified for my customer base with this example is that traditional workplace tools can be inefficient or distracting. So think about, if you are focusing on corresponding with your workmates over email, and then you're always having those emails pop up and they're distracting your workflow. Studies have found, by the way, that if you are distracted when doing work, it takes about 7 or 8 minutes for you to get back into a flow state of mind if you're doing deep thinking or heavy work. And so an email can be a distraction. It does impact your ability to be productive in a workplace setting. So for a lot of workplaces, for small and large and tech-savvy businesses, this is a problem. It's impacting people's productivity and frankly impacting their happiness. Because if you're getting distracted all day long and not getting any work, you're not feeling very accomplished. So step 3 is what we call unique value proposition. And this is something I know I've discussed in a previous presentation about competitive advantage and value proposition. So by all means, do go back to that presentation and hear a little bit more about this in detail. But what I want you to think about with a unique value proposition is thinking about what you can do to solve your customers' problems in a way that nobody else can. And that includes any direct competitors you might have, or even those alternatives to problems that we talked about in step two. Right? So that's if a study guide or a study book is the alternative being used right now, what can we do with our software that is bringing more value to our customers, our teachers, our students, that these study guides and books cannot do. And if we can identify what makes us unique among others and why we are doing it better than those alternatives, then that puts us in a really strong position to have value that speaks directly to a customer need. Within the Lean Canvas, they have something called a high level concept. This is essentially a metaphor. You'll see it in most Lean Canvas templates called X for Y. So this is where you want to make a comparison. So right, so you can think, I don't know what this study planning software might look like, but let's say it's a way to match up students with teachers. So your high level concept. This is not a very good example, but maybe it's like Hinge or Tinder for studying and students and tutors, right? So there's the matchmaking service. And I say that because most people will know, in your X for Y, you want to have something that's common as a common name. So people might understand if I'm talking about um, big companies, right? Uber, Airbnb, hotels, whatever that might be. And that gives you an idea. You're saying, look, we're going to be like this company, but we're going to do it in this industry. And it's just kind of a one sentence way of helping people to understand, oh, I think I understand what you're talking about. I think I understand how you are meaning to structure this company. That sounds a little abstract. Let me give you the example from this company. So the unique value proposition that this company wants to bring forward is that all your messages, all of your company knowledge is in one place, in one software, and without needing the interruptions of email. So in this case, I didn't put my X for Y here, but in this case, the X for Y high level concept is like um, Google Suite for workplaces. Google does have a workplace feature, but it's distributed across several different things. Well, I'm doing that, but for a single unified workplace. Everyone understands Google. Everyone kind of understands what that means. Or at least I should say the customers that I'm wanting to speak with, they should understand what I mean when I say Google Workspace, hopefully. If they don't understand that, then maybe my metaphor is not good enough. Or maybe I'm not approaching the right customers, but Google Workspace for unified communication software. Okay, now that we've identified what makes us unique, we're going to move into how we're solving that problem that we identified in step two. So we've said we know who our customers are. Here are the problems we think that they have. Here's why we're in a unique position to solve those problems. Well, what are we solving? What are we offering our customers? How does it solve those problems? And how is it meeting their priorities? When we're talking about solutions, again, very important that we think about it from the customer perspective. So it's not necessarily that we have a new widget that is using new colors and gizmos. It is about how those colors and gizmos and widgets are making our customer lives better in some way. You can think about value, customer value, in kind of two main ways. Gain creators and pain relievers. If I'm taking away some of your pain, or if I'm giving you more value, either way, that is something that is making your customer's life better in some way that they can appreciate and measure and value. And so if you can identify that solution, again, from the customer perspective, it's all about the benefits you're bringing to them, not necessarily about the features of your solution. So the solution that this company has proposed is a centralized and organized space where teams can communicate, share files, and manage products all in one single space. So all of these different tasks and projects and initiatives, they're all interconnected a little bit more. Some of you might have already guessed what company that I'm referencing, but we're going to keep digging deeper into this. So step 5 in the process is channels. The idea of a channel, and this could be for marketing, this can be for sales operations, is understanding how you're going to interact with your customers. And if you know supply chains, you can think about this, right? So interacting with your customers doesn't necessarily just mean the downstream side where you're selling and communicating with clients and users. But also, if you have something with, if it's a physical product and you need to have vendors of your own, or if you're outsourcing anything, and you need to work with them to be able to create your solution that then gets passed on to the customer. Your channels are where you're going to identify all of those touch points. So understanding how you're going to communicate, how you're going to distribute everything. Are you going to be selling directly to your customers? Are you going to be having, part of a retail storefront? Are you going to be having sales commission staff? Right? Like what does that look like for you? Are you going to be marketing online, traditional media, print? Right? You want to think about all the different ways that you are going to have some communication, some way to interact with everyone else around you. And so it's a process of thinking through that web. And this is where Lean Canvas comes in handy, because this is probably the one that's going to change the most as you get in and closer to launching your product, service, solution. This is the thing that gets the most complicated. When we say supply chain, you can't think about it like a chain link fence, but also the chain goes off in 17 directions this way and 15 directions that way. So start with your first draft now and understand, who is it essential that I communicate with on a daily basis or a regular basis to make sure that people understands what I need and how I exist and why that matters. Start, as always, with your customers. Even if you don't know yet if you're producing something of tangible value, even if you're not sure exactly how you're going to source or manufacture or do anything to get that solution created, again, best thing you can do for a first draft is think about your customers. How will your customers interact with you? And if you start from there, you will build on that over time. And again, because this is a first draft that you'll take a post-it note and update over time, start by just identifying that one main channel. Am I going to interact with people in person? Am I going to trade shows? Am I going to farmers markets? Am I going to conventions? Am I going to only be online? Start with just that one channel and build off of it from there, because we're going to be going through that validation exercise as well over time. And if a channel, right, you want to be able to focus on that channel, see if it works. If it works, great, do it again. If it doesn't work, no problem, go do something else. Right. So this is that opportunity for you to have some flexibility in your approach, but at least you're starting with something and saying, I think this is my best path forward. On channels, the other thing to be aware of is it's probably best to pick fewer channels to start with and maybe expand over time, because every channel has resources and time and cost and energy associated with it. So if you want to start by getting customers, focus in, narrow and targeted is a better way of approaching this, because it allows you to put more attention and energy and time and resources into that one channel. That's going to increase your likelihood of success. Channels, again, right? So they can be direct channels. They can also be intermediaries. So an intermediary can be a retailer, a wholesaler, someone working on commission who's not part of your team. But then understanding, again, always think about the customer and how is the customer going to find even that intermediary? And are you selling something to that intermediary? Then are they becoming your customer, or are they helping facilitate access to customers for you through their infrastructure, through their relationship? So Google, as an example, would be an interesting intermediary. If you're doing paid search advertising, you have to go to Google. Google is not your customer. In fact, you're paying them. But then when people go online to search for something, you want to be able to show up high in those rankings. So you're working with an indirect channel to reach those customers. Going back to my company example. So this company, they set off trying to do online sales only and looking at company websites and other e-commerce platforms, but they also identified partnerships as a potential path forward. So working with other software providers in the technology space and liking to have partnerships. So essentially combining this product, this solution, with other solutions out there as a package deal to try and find a way to create joint value. And they also, of course, traditional sales and marketing, reaching out directly, had sales team going to small businesses and professionals in that early adopter market and saying, right, I know you probably have some pain. I know you probably are using an alternative in some way. I'm here to tell you about my solution and why I think it matters to you. So these are the channels that this particular company that they engage with. Now, step 6. This one is always a bit of a challenge, and is something that probably will get updated quite a bit over time. Revenue streams. Revenue, from a lean canvas perspective, you can use this in 2 different ways. First, how are you going to make money? And so this is your pricing model, right? So is it one-time revenue? Is it recurring revenue? What does your pricing structure look like? Right? Are you going to have incentives, discounts, sales? What will your price points be? Are you going to have different levels of pricing for different services and offers? This is something, again, why we have a lean canvas, because we know our pricing model is going to change drastically over time. Very rarely is the first price point going to be the one that you will grow your company with. So think about this as a way of just starting to understand the implications and starting to get feedback on what that price point might be. The second part of that question is, how much money do you think you'll make? Over time, we're going to turn this into a revenue forecast or a financial forecast and understand, if everything goes according to plan, and I think I can sell something at $300 and I'm going to get 5 new customers a year, what does that mean at the end of year 1? So we don't even have to necessarily even open Excel at this point. We will eventually, but for now, we're just putting down some rough numbers to say, okay, I think that I can, every sale I make is going to be worth about this much. And here's how many customers I think are going to be interested in that. Because we've gone through that work already prior in our canvas of looking through market sizing and the pain and how we're solving that pain. Well, how much is it to these customers? How much is it worth to them to have solved that pain? Is it worth $10 a month? Is it worth $1,000 a year? Is it worth $10 a year? This is where we're going to start to try and link everything together in monetary terms. And then after this, and we'll talk about this at the end, we're going to go off and ask potential customers, does this price point make sense to you? Is it too high? Is it too low? Is this something you think you would be willing to pay? And if they say, no, it's too high, no, it's too low, well, get a second opinion first. And then over time, if you're getting more and more feedback that this is incorrect, what you've put down in your revenue streams, then this is your chance to update things before it gets too locked in to a defined business plan. So our company here, they have a subscription fee. It's software, as we've mentioned before. And so you are paying essentially a monthly rate to access this particular solution. And because we talked about partnerships with other solutions and other softwares as part of their channel approach, they're also doing revenue sharing. So, hey, let's put our 2 softwares together into a joint package. Let's sell them as one. You get 50% of the revenue. I get 50% of the revenue. The other revenue stream that they put together was to say, hey, we've got really brilliant people inside our company. They're building the technology, but they can also provide access to their expertise. And you know what? Let's turn that into a bit of a consulting service. And we can train people on how to use our software and how to not only use it at a base level, but become experts in it and use it to uplift their game. Don't forget, we're doing things like project management, correspondence, team building. All of these things can be quite complicated. Let's find a way to help our customers unlock additional value, and maybe they'll pay us for it. Okay, you got to spend money to make money. And so we get into step 7 on our lean canvas, and that is our costs. So this is the idea, trying to figure out what it will take to build out that first version of our solution, our minimum viable prototype, MVP. And so we want to think then about just the absolute bare minimum costs that we will require in order to get to market, essentially, to have something that people are willing to pay for in some capacity. So that might be people. You might need to hire someone to build part of your solution for you. Maybe you can do it yourself, and maybe you've decided it's okay. You don't need to take a salary just yet. And in which case, then hopefully you'll be able to get a salary of some kind over time. But there's going to be some other costs. Maybe it's operations. Maybe you need to set up some warehousing, storage, materials, anything like that. And then also thinking about any legal or regulatory. So if you're working in something that is using access to private information, you might need to have web security and web hosting costs, infrastructure to make sure that that information is not being put at risk. From a legal perspective, you probably are going to have to incorporate. You might have to have some contracts and internal shareholder agreements and other documents that will cost a few $1,000s. Well, what is essential for you to have right now? And with cost, again, because we're thinking about this at the early stage of a company, over time there will be more costs. With a lean canvas, if you have not yet launched your product, all you need to think about right now is what you need to do to have something built that you'll be able to get to your early adopters with something they'll pay for. So maybe you don't need to have a $10,000 branding process just yet. Maybe you can have a $500 website instead of a $5,000 website. Before we start earning revenue, we have to make sure that we are being very smart and prudent with our costs and the cash that we have on hand right now. Because maybe you've gotten a grant, maybe you've taken out some debt, maybe it's your own savings that you're using to invest into the development of the solution. Well, if things don't go well and you don't earn revenue to make that money back, that might put you in a tricky financial situation. So with costs, we're not even thinking right now about in year 3, when I have 1,000 customers, here's what I'm going to spend my marketing budget on. We don't need to think about that just yet because we're not thinking about year 3. We're barely even thinking about year 1. We're just thinking about how quickly can I build something that will solve a problem for the early adopters that I've identified in my lead canvas. So you can see why this is all interconnected now. With my company example, their costs were research and development. Again, this is software, and they were wanting to build new products and features and applications. And because, again, it is online, web hosting was important, and they wanted to do direct sales and marketing and outreach. And so marketing and advertising online. So think things like Google, social media, YouTube, paid advertising, all of these things, in this specific example, these are costs and marketing channels that the company wanted to identify as priorities. So these were channels to reach their customers. They decided these channels were essential and they were ready to pay for them immediately. Now, step number 8 is the idea of making sure that you're measuring success or traction in some way. And not every startup thinks about metrics right away, but it is so important to make sure that you are on the right path. So with a lean canvas, this is your opportunity to say, I think I'm going to measure my success based on the number of users or the revenue that I'm bringing in, or some other thing that's specific to your industry, right? If you're in clean technology, then maybe you're looking at CO2 greenhouse gas emissions reduced. If you're looking at, I'm not sure what another example would be off the top of my head, but you can think, right? These intangibles might be helpful in different ways, right? If you really something to do with healthcare, maybe it's the number of people you've diverted without your support. Maybe they would have had to go to the hospital and cost the healthcare system more and have that person be in an uncomfortable situation. So, right, there's different ways of measuring success. How will you measure success? And there's 2 different ways of thinking about metrics. There's what we call a lead metric. These are things that under your control. They are the measurable actions that you can take and you have full control over. So, and lag metrics is the other one, is the effect and the impact that's caused by your actions. So the examples I gave at the beginning, number of users, number of revenue, all these things, these are what we call lag metrics. You can't control the number of users that are coming to your solution. You can't control the amount of revenue because you can't force someone to open their wallet to give you their money. What you can do is take efforts to find a way to get those users, to get that revenue. And that is where your lead metric comes in. So what is that metric for? Does it mean that you have to call 5 people a week? Does it mean that you have to have a presence at 3 trade shows? Does it mean that you have to have 6 blog posts written to help people understand what your solution is? All of these things, right? Attendance at a trade show, that's under your control. Calling potential customers, only you can do that, right? Like writing a blog post, that's 100% on you. That's why we call it a lead metric, because you can lead within that. And then the lag metric, if everything has gone well, and I've written my blog posts, I've called my people, I've gone to my trade shows, the impact of that work should be showing up in your lag metric. And again, you decide what that is. Is it users? Is it revenue? Is it something else? Is it customer satisfaction? Is it how much customers are referring other people to you? What we call a net promoter score. These are all great ways of measuring success. And you do want to have a number behind it. So the acronym SMART, something that is specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time bound. What that really means is you want to have a number, right? And that number needs to be clear. You know what you're measuring, you know how you're measuring it, and you understand what that number means in the measurement. Okay, so we talked about metrics. So with our company, their metrics that they've looked at are the number of people who are downloading their app, the number of people who are posting a message on the communication side of that application, the percentage of people that are subscribing to the application at the end of a trial period. And for them, what was really important was making sure that they were active users. So not just, X number of users, but people who are using it on a daily basis. So a good metric for them was the number of daily users. So you can see here, these are all lag metrics, right? You can't influence necessarily the number of people who are downloading the app. What you can do is make sure from a lead metrics perspective that you have a good number of joint partnership sales. You've identified enough partnerships to have that joint process go forward to create joint value, that you have a marketing budget that will put you in touch with X number of people over a certain period of time, right? So thinking not just about, well, I'm going to market to people, I'm going to sell online. Okay, well, how are you going to do that? What are you going to spend? What does success look like if everything goes according to plan? Well, I think I'm going to spend $10,000 to reach 500 people. That is a much more effective way of measuring success than just saying, here, Google, you can have my money. Finally, we've come to step 9. This is the final step in the lean canvas. And so going back to unfair advantage, this is very similar to step 3, going back to the idea of unique value proposition. But the reason I like to do this at the end is because the unfair advantage for me is a way of summing up everything that came in the 8 steps before that. And really it's answering the question of what can you do better than anyone else? So your unique value proposition is talking about the value that you're providing to solve customer pain. So it's a little more specific on that side. Your unfair advantage could be the speed of your operations. It can be the channels you've identified. It can be your cost structure. It can be metrics that are honing in on the exact right thing. So it's something that maybe you're keeping it as a trade secret. Maybe it's just speed to market. Maybe you're just really good at what you do. And that's your unfair advantage. So think of it like a summary that you can come with at the end of the day. And this is something that you'll be able to use in marketing and sales meetings as you start to go have those conversations with potential customers. So the final clue for us on this particular company, their unfair advantage is an all-in-one solution that allows their customers to share files and message users through something that very centralized flow that right now has to be done with multiple separate applications, bringing it all together. That's an unfair advantage because if you have it all in one place, not only can you access everything at the same time, but all those things start to work together and increase the value of the whole as better than the sum of its parts. Dramatic pause from me for a second, particularly for the recording. Take a couple seconds to try and identify, if you haven't already, what software, what solution, what company you think I'm talking about. It is Slack. And I have to tell you, a few months ago, I was going through this exercise with some students, undergrad students, and I felt very old because they didn't understand, they didn't know Slack. I hope this audience might know a little bit more. But if you don't, Slack is essentially the number one workplace messaging application software for teams. It's kind of like millennials in particular. They've really adopted Slack as a platform. So I hope that resonated with you. I hope some of you might even have heard or guessed, I should say, guessed the company name before we got to the end. But you can see, in going through this, and now even if you go back and look through the 9 steps and look at the example again, you will see the building blocks, right? Slack didn't come in and say, I have this specific software and I can sell it to you. They did it very deliberately. And I don't know whether or not they did actually start with a lean canvas, but by starting with their customers and the problems they had, the unique value they could provide, the way that they provided that value through specific solutions, the channels they connected with their customers with, the revenue model, their cost structure, and how they measure success, that gave them the unfair advantage that really has led to a significant overall portion of the workplace communications market share worldwide. They're a very, very big company. Okay, last thing from me. So you've done it. And in 90 minutes or less, you have created the first draft of your lean canvas that will eventually become your business plan. Well, the first draft is not your final draft, not even close. And again, a reminder, a lean canvas is meant to be improved and iterated on over time. So it's now your job to go out and validate those assumptions and update your work as you start to learn more things about your industry and your customers and your solution and your operations. So I would suggest updating your lean canvas on a weekly basis, going through, if it's just you or with your team, sitting down every week and saying, what did we learn this week? And does that change anything to our assumptions in the business model anywhere? And weekly might sound like a lot, but your business is going to be changing a lot in those early stages. Eventually, that will slow down. Think of it like cement, right? Cement is very liquid and porous. You can do a lot of things with it as you just mix. And eventually that will start to stabilize and start to get rock hard. Once you hit that level of cement that is calcified, that you have stability on, that's when that you'll be able to start going into more detail. That's when you'll start to be able to, with confidence, reliably draft a more detailed business plan, if that is something that you need, that 20, 40, 60-page document that really gets into the details. Because you'll have the foundations of your business plan now already set because you've gone through this Canvas process and it's been validated. And of course, the importance of doing this on a weekly basis is because we're going out and talking to people, customers, users, stakeholders. You're going out and having these conversations. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is launching a business and assuming that you know what the customer needs. You might be 100% right, but that is the exception. It's not the rule. And it is better to double check and have conversations with those people to make sure that you are understanding who they are, what they need, and how you can bring them value. So as you're going through and validating elements of your canvas, go and ask future customers some questions, right? So, and ask yourself, have you identified the right problem? Have you identified the right customer? The channels that you've identified, are they reaching people in the right way? Are you think your revenue and your pricing model, is that realistic? Are people willing to pay that much? Are you pricing too little, even where you might be able to charge a little bit more? And then do these prospects, do these potential future customers agree that you have unique value, that you have an advantage, an unfair advantage that is relevant to them? Lots of different ways you can think about questions, and lots of different ways that you can think about how you're going to validate that work. As long as you're going out and having conversations with future customers, that is going to give you the insights that you need to finesse and refine and edit your lean canvas to help you to grow a successful business model and business plan over time. So thank you very much for your attention. And I'm happy to now, we'll take off the recording and happy to answer any questions that you might have. For those of you on the recording right now, if you do have any questions or want to go through a lean canvas draft, by all means, reach out to Innovate Eastman and we'll be happy to start that journey with you. So thank you very much for your attention.